welcome to the 2019 Toyota Corolla. This is the XSE hatchback with a 6-speed manual transmission. I spent a little bit of time in one of these at Road America a couple years ago at the Mama Spring Rally, and I've really been looking forward to getting some more time in one. I love this blue color. It's awesome. It's really sharp. Probably the best way to go with this XSE. It has nice big wheels. I think from a design standpoint, Toyota's having a little bit of fun with this car, and it drives about as good as it looks. It's a little bit low on power, but think of it as kind of a front-wheel drive Miata, and it starts to make a little bit more sense. Not a bad price either, about $23,000 base price for this, about $25,000 as tested with some extra options and things you honestly don't really need. So overall, really good first impressions on this car. I do like this. It's a fun car to drive. It's very practical. It feels really well made, just from the way the doors open to the materials inside. Everything has a plush softness to it, much like a lot of other modern Toyotas. But this just feels very massaged over and very refined. The way it rides down the road, the way all of your controls and inputs feel, it definitely feels like a quality item. And Corollas have always been known for their bulletproof nature, and this is really no different. 168 horsepower from the 2-liter engine, and I'm so glad they're offering a manual in this car because it's actually a pretty good manual. We'll get into all that later. Looking in the back here, one thing I am noticing, it's a good thing and a bad thing. So it's a kind of a higher loading space here, but you don't have as much vertical cargo capacity as you would with many other hatchbacks. Of course, you take this out, you fold down the rear seats, and you've got plenty of room. But just something I thought was kind of strange, just how high this deck loading height is. Really sharp looking rear end on this thing. I think it's so cool how the rear hatch kind of protrudes out. Feels very spacious, more than enough room for passengers in the back. Cool front end design. Alright, you guys have seen this thing. Also the XSE spoiler looks pretty racy too. Let's take this for a drive. Nice little reverse camera. The car will automatically disengage the parking brake when you put it into gear and you have your seatbelt on and you let the clutch out. Nice light controls at low speeds. Clutch is very, very easy to modulate, easy to use. I'm impressed at how smooth and refined this manual transmission is to drive. There's also a cool little intelligent IMT button that anticipates the revs for the needed gear that you're in, whether it's upshifting or downshifting. It'll just hold the revs there for a split second when you're shifting into higher gear, and for lower gears, when you're downshifting, it'll give you a little bit of a throttle blip. It's a really nice system. It's non-intrusive, and I've been using it quite a bit when I get into this car. It just makes for a little bit of a smoother shifting experience. Of course, with it off, it's easy to heel toe, downshift, easy to rev match. It's still very nice to drive. I do really like this shifter, so this is kind of a highlight for me in this car because I'm really rooting for the manual transmission still these days, and a lot of manufacturers just aren't coming out with nice gearboxes. This is a great gearbox. I like the taller shifter position. It's a little bit of a longer throw, but it's nice because it's close to the steering wheel. You can kind of fall down to hand really easily, and there's a decent amount of throttle response. There's zero rev hang. This is how rev hanging should be. High RPMs, dip the clutch, the revs immediately drop. And what all this adds up to is just it's a fun car to drive. So we'll get this out of the way first. It's not fast. You put this into some higher revs, and it can pull. It does okay. But if you're in a lower gear and you're trying to pass, you're gonna have to downshift a couple of gears. and really use that above 5,000 RPM power band to get going. A couple other things when I first got in this car, my opinions have changed a little bit. I'm not too crazy about Toyota's new gauge cluster, this bluish thing. It looks a little complicated on first inspection, and it's a little bit dark in bright daylight, but I'll say I've gotten used to it and I don't mind it as much anymore. It gives you a good amount of information. It's actually pretty simple once you figure out where everything is and how it's laid out. There's really not a lot to fiddle around with or deep menus. This infotainment works well. There's buttons for everything. The climate control has buttons and knobs. It's all very easy to use ergonomically. After the first day, it's totally fine. I've been getting pretty impressive gas mileage in this too. Flogging it all week, I've been getting about 31 miles to the gallon. I believe this is rated for 28 city, 37 highway, or something like that. It's pretty good. There's a little second gear pull. It's not as slow as like a Crosstrek or a base Veloster or something like that. So it's got a little bit of power to it. But, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, you gotta rev it out a little bit, and it honestly, to me, feels about the same as same power band as a Miata, which is kind of fun. Sounds decent too. Second gear just passes 60 miles an hour. The turn in is really sharp. There's a lot of front end bite in this car. The chassis in this is fantastic. Maybe someday we'll see a Gazoo racing version of this. One can only hope. This would make an excellent hot hatch platform. But for the price as it sits, I think this is a good buy for enthusiasts. I mean, if you want a daily driver that's bomb-proof, reliable, practical, still fun to drive with this manual transmission, you really can't go wrong with this Corolla. It's a pretty nice overall package. Let's hop onto the highway here and I'll show you guys what radar guided cruise control looks like. Again, another manual transmission that nails adaptive cruise control, which is pretty awesome. Feel a little bit of torque vectoring going on there with the stability control. Kind of sets that front end sharper into the corner. Ride quality is really nice. Not a ton of wind noise. There's a little bit of cabin intrusion over bumps and pavement unevenness, but it's not terrible, and it's probably mostly due to those really skinny tires. So cruise control, super easy to engage. Toyota's kind of switched it up in recent years. They've used these dial buttons instead of the traditional push up down, which I was kind of sad to see go, but this is just as intuitive. You can operate it without paying attention, without looking down, and without having to take your eyes off the road. No 5 mile an hour increments, just one press for 1 mile an hour. Works pretty well. Can be a little bit conservative when you're in traffic with following distance. I find a lot of people wanting to pass me and get in front of me because the car is over braking a little bit. As far as power goes, there isn't really a ton of highway passing power. You put your foot flat in 6th gear, and there really isn't a lot home, a lot going on. You have to downshift into 5th, 4th, or even 3rd to get some power out of this. But once you do, it pulls okay. It does a pretty good job. Again, it's a real joy rowing through these gears. It's a nice manual transmission. definitely, I would say it's the best manual offered in the class. Between the intelligent manual transmission rev matching to just the way the shift feel is, the way the revs drop between gears, it's all so balanced and all so perfectly in harmony that just makes this car feel really nice to drive and really refined at the same time. Let's do a little bit of an audio test here too. So we'll hop into Apple CarPlay, go to our soundtrack tests here. I'm actually really impressed with the audio system. To me, the sound quality in this Corolla feels and sounds like something out of a much more expensive, much higher end car. It's crystal clear. The bass is nice and crisp and strong. There's a lot of clarity, really a lot of nice high def sounds coming out of these speakers. Give you guys a little cornering example here. You can really feel that front end just gain grip. There's definitely some stability control trickery going on, allowing the chassis to move around a little bit. I can feel some braking going on those inside wheels to get that front end turned in. But it works, and it creates a nice neutral rotation to the car and a good character at high speed cornering. Alright, this will be a good opportunity for 0 to 60 here. Brakes are nice. Despite how refined this car feels, there's a lot of feedback too that's transmitted to the driver. I know exactly where I am on my braking pressure, on my pedal, just how close I am to ABS. The steering feels really good. I can really tell through the chassis how close I am to those limits of grip. Again, slow car fast, guys. That's really where this stands. Let's turn off traction control. Takes a few seconds to hold that button. Miles an hour. You're not going to win any drag races, but it's quick enough to give you the sensation of speed. And again, for the price, this isn't really a speedy car. I think what it lacks in power and speed, it makes up for in refinement, comfort. The sound system's very impressive. And the fact that it's just going to be a bomb-proof Corolla is a pretty big win too. I think the 6-speed makes just the right balance between shift throw distance, notchiness, and accuracy between gates. Again, everything in this car, it works in harmony. It's all so well balanced. These seats are pretty comfortable too. I've done some longer drives in this week. Haven't had any trouble finding a good driving position. And of course, with all the leather everywhere, pretty decent touch points as well. Turn traction control back on so we can get radar right guided cruise control. So yeah, for me, that pretty much sums it up. We've got, you know, pretty standard Apple CarPlay infotainment. I don't believe this has Android Auto. The screen's a little bit laggy, but it's fine. You get the job done. We've got, you know, a map button, takes you right to Apple Maps, which is kind of nice. If you're plugged into your car, you've got various apps through here. But, you know, pretty standard Toyota infotainment, not distracting in any way. Pretty much has everything that you need, and, you know, no real frills that you don't. Gives you a good amount of information with fuel economy, stuff like that. In the digital gauge cluster here, we have following distance, audio source, your trip odometer, and then you can control things like lane departure assist, stuff like that. I haven't really messed around too much with lane keep or lane departure. It's more of a lane departure warning and a little bit of a bump with the steering, as opposed to an actual lane centering system, which I'm okay with. But I love how easy all of this is to adjust right here with my thumb on the steering wheel. The ergonomics in this car are really good. You can also switch the gauge cluster from analog to digital, so you can see a digital mile per hour. I kind of prefer the analog, but that is an adjustable option. When the radar guided cruise control does see an obstacle or a car pulls in front of you, it's not slamming on the brakes, it's operating, leaving that, you know, blending that differential and distance nicely. You can also change gears with cruise control engaged too. The only time cruise control will disengage is if you're just coming to a stop and there's a car in front of you slowing down. You're going to hit that 1500 RPM point or so, and it'll just disengage the cruise control, tell you to dip the clutch. Find myself pretty much going full throttle through every gear. There's something satisfying to that. Well, that's going to sum it up for my thoughts on the Corolla. Really, my first impressions on this held pretty true over time, even though when I first got to driving it, I only spent about 10 minutes in the car. But the more I drive this, the more I really enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. Again, if you want something fast, get a Veloster N or something, but if you just want a nice, reliable, fun daily driver that's just a really nice overall vehicle, this is a great way to go. And for the price, I think this is the best manual transmission in a hatchback offered on the market. You know, unless if you go with like a GTI or get into a Veloster R-Spec, but those are different cars. The Corolla is it's a pretty legendary nameplate in terms of reliability, and this really takes it up a notch in terms of quality and driving feel. This this new platform, this new hatchback design is a phenomenal package, and definitely punches above its weight in terms of feel and quality. And this definitely does feel like a little bit more of a luxurious item, and still remains to be fun to drive, which I think is a great achievement by Toyota. And I appreciate their effort in the design and making this such a nice overall package. Alright guys, well that sums it up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.